All right, welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Enos from Sarasota County Schools Police Department in Florida. He has over 33 years experience in law enforcement. He teaches for the FBI National Academy, the Attorney General. He's a school policing specialist, and he created the third ever fully functional school police department in Florida. Really looking forward to having this conversation today. Welcome to the show, Chief Enos. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak about law enforcement. It has been my life dream and my goal that I've been able to have a blessed career for 33 years, and it's a very rewarding career that I would say anybody that they're really involved in their community that they should do this.
Thank you. What was it that got you interested in this profession in the first place? You said it was a dream and something that you always wanted to do. Why?
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, really comes back to what kind of, I have a heart of a servant. So, acts of service is very, very important to me. So one of the things, going through Sarasota County schools, graduated from high school, went to Florida State University, got out of Florida State, came back here. I had some friends that were just beginning in law enforcement, and they were talking to me about it. It was something that I thought about back when I was in high school, that this would be a really cool job. I mean, you look at the TV shows, they show the police driving fast, doing things. So I thought, this may be a good career. And it just happened to match up with the type of person that I am, which, like I said, I'm an acts of service kind of person. So to be able to go back, to be able to help and go into your community, and especially I ended up becoming specialized in school policing. You really get an opportunity to really be impactful for the youth, which ultimately is what is the foundation of our society, because they're the people that eventually are going to be making laws. They're going to be doctors. They're going to be all of the things that we need to be successful. So, what is a better way than my career choice was to go into school policing, which is to ultimately is to help kids, and I've done that. As out of my 33 years, probably 23 of them have been working with kids.
Wow. Yeah, I've said this before, but I think that there are so many young people out there that maybe don't come from a good background. I can relate to being one of those kids, and maybe don't have a lot of positive influence, don't have a lot of direction in their life. And to have people like yourself and the individuals who work in school policing to set a good example, to show up for them, and to show them that there is life and there are things that you can do that are maybe better than what you were born into or what your current circumstances, and giving people hope for the future.
Well, I agree 100% because also I came from poverty with my mom, single mom, me and my sister. I'm from New Jersey. We moved down here when I was in the ninth grade to Florida with my stepfather. You know, didn't have a whole lot of positive stuff. And the whole thing with the school policing, especially law enforcement, is one of the things that I always tried to do was to show people and kids is the most successful people are people that are not overly officious. They're not, I'm the policeman. It's having an interest in them, right? So when you create those interests and create those relationships, it makes you feel more fulfilled and it's a lot better. So when you really look at the school policing angle and the law enforcement, it really is about what you can do back to your community and the relationships that you build. And coming from that type of family background, I know how that important was because, to be perfectly honest, I didn't have this.
Right.
So for me to give back and to be a good listener, a lot of times is kids are kids, but they want to have somebody to hear what they have to say, and then try to help them because a lot of times they don't have anybody to help them. And if I can be able to provide some guidance and mentorship to be able to show them, hey, listen, I'm just a dad, I'm a regular guy, I'm just a high school graduate from right here. I went to some of the same teachers are still here teaching that I went. So it's like, hey, I was in so and so's class. I understand what that is, and we're able to relate to them. That able to prevent some things. And we've had some students that have opened up to some really horrific things that have happened to them in their homes, and it's because of that relationship. Because we're people first, we're community members. Our profession is law enforcement, and I think that is really what drives it.
I think, first of all, thank you for sharing about your background. I wasn't aware of that. And I really believe that our past experiences and sometimes the hardest things that we go through prepare us for the future. And I've said this before in my own personal experience. I don't know if I would care as much about wellness and what I do if I didn't come from the background that I did. I don't know if I would have that same sense of empathy and, motivation because I know the opposite, right? I know what it's like to not feel valued. I know what it's like to struggle with self-worth. I know what it's like to like not be able to process the things that I went through and to like shove them down and posture up and learn how to survive. And I also know what it's like to avoid and escape and numb and all the things. And I was really angry and so I know like what that does to you. And I think that that's why I have the passion and the empathy that I do now. And of course, we never want young people to go through those situations, and you never want someone to go through what you went through. But because you went through that, now you can show up for other people with a sense of emotional intelligence and empathy and authenticity, and I always thought, and I don't know if you've ever felt like this in your life, or if this is just my experience, but I always tried to hide that. I always thought that like if I just kind of gave the perception that I was perfect, that then everyone would like love me and respect me and all these things. And I realized that the opposite is actually true, that it's really unrelatable when someone shows up and they're like, yep, everything's been perfect. I'm good. Like, and I think when you can let those walls down a little bit and you can show people the human side of you and they can understand that you have also been through hard things, then it allows them to relate to you and feel like the things that they strive for in life are actually attainable.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you because at the end of the day, truly what it is about it's a lot easier for me to be to say, I'm a policeman, but I'm a community member, and yeah, I also was a kid here. Yeah, I also understand about some of the pitfalls. Yes, I understand what depression is like. I understand what it's like to feel those things. I understand as a policeman. I mean, I appreciate you on the mental health aspect because what we do as police, we're not supposed to have any feelings, and that has changed in about the last 5 years to 10 years. It's been a very, very slow process because here I am. I'm the type A. I'm the alpha. I'm the tough guy. Nothing hurts me. I got to do this, and I see horrible tragedies. When I was in field training, I saw 2 homicides. It's just a normal person. Like you can watch something on TV, but you know it's TV. When you're actually standing, you're looking, and you see the impact. It affects you no matter what you think or you don't think. And what do? We push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down. And that's why we know that more law enforcement officers commit suicide than they're actually killed in the line of duty. And it's really is a national epidemic that it's because of all of those things, and we're supposed to be something different than really what we are. Because if you're not authentic to who you are and you're not authentic, your marriage doesn't work, your relationships in your community don't work, your relationships with your peers don't work. It's always about, hey, this is what I've been through, but I and have understanding and that empathy. That goes a long way, especially with kids, because Sarasota is a pretty nice place to live in. Well, we have a lot of kids, no matter what your level. And I tell parents, it doesn't matter whether you're the multimillionaire or billionaire's kid, or you're the person that's on, food stamps and government assistance. Kids are kids are kids. They all have the same issues. And it's one of those things where if you're authentic with them, that they will respond to you because the good thing about kids is that they can see right through you. They haven't had all of those walls built up and I have to act a certain way. They'll know. They'll know. It's just one of the things that the effectiveness of the whole marijuana campaign from 30 years ago. You can never do that campaign now because kids have Google. So if I told you, hey, oh, by the way, this and this and this, and you'll end up doing this and birth defect, all this stuff that they preached marijuana, reefer madness 30 years ago, some kid would Google it in class and you would instantly lose your credibility because you're not being authentic, you're not speaking from the heart, you're not telling them what it is. So I agree with you 100%, especially in my profession. It goes a long way just to be yourself,
Yeah.
just to be who you really are and what you've been through. And I don't think it's a weakness to be able to tell people or share. That's why when we spoke, I'm very transparent because if I'm not who I am, then I'm doing a disservice to everybody that's around us. And cops are just people first. And that's one of the reasons I got into it, is to show, like, it was like a blessing and a curse to my kids, right?
Mhm.
So their father, who's in youth services in charge of all the deputies in the schools, and all the kids knew that I was that. So it was kind of like a blessing for them that I was that, but it was a curse because then it led to some issues with friends and people because their dad was that guy. But I always was the same guy that went in there that would tell jokes and, you know, would sit down, just be me and be authentic. And I think that's one of the biggest things, like you said, is when you're authentic, people can see that. They're going to respond better. They're going to build relationships with you because you're not doing something that you're really not. And at some point, all those walls will come crashing down. So you just don't, you want to try to lower them as you go instead of waiting until all of a sudden the whole building collapses and now you're under the rubble. And that's what we find out with a lot of officers in this profession.
Yeah, and a lot of what you said is, the trust and the relationship piece of it, right? It's like someone had described this as almost like a piggy bank, like you're
Right.
constantly like,
Making
putting
deposits.
making deposits. That's correct. And we all know that trust takes a long time to build, and it takes a very short amount of time to completely crumble. And I think that the more we can build relationships with people where they truly understand who we are and our intentions behind things, then when there are times of turbulence, which there will be, then they can refer back to your character and they know who you are. But if you don't allow them to connect with you on that human level and to build those relationships and build that trust, then you don't have a foundation to stand on when it crumbles. And so I do think that that's really important. One of the things I wanted to ask you, you spent the majority of your career in school policing. What is maybe one thing that people who have never been in school policing um, maybe don't understand or don't know or don't realize about like kind of the intricacies?
Well, you're very specialized, right? You go from being on the road or being a detective. There's a variety of things, community policing, mounted patrol. There's a million levels, but in schools is that the biggest thing is you have it. What most officers and most people don't realize is that the impact that if you are a really good school resource officer that you have on kids' lives is that they would really be, I guess they would be kind of shocked to see that these guys are out there and these ladies are building these relationships because ultimately you don't want to have a terrible tragedy like that happened here at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas on February 14th of 2018. You don't want to have something like that where um, everything is changed in an instant because some kid starts murdering other children, right? So I think that most people wouldn't realize is that it's a hugely stressful position to be in because let's say at our largest high school there's about 3,000 students. So you're really, and there's probably another 300 400 staff members there. You have a big, it's like a small city. You're literally you're there as the guardian to prevent those things and to be and work the relationships to be able to make sure that those kids are safe. On the other side of it, it is very, very rewarding because when you build those relationships with those kids, the amount that you feel as the officer is amazing. Just between, I don't want to call it love, but the respect, being invited, getting invited to graduation parties, getting invited to, you're at prom or all these different things that you get out of it. But I think most people would be really not understanding how impactful it is. But it's also very, very specialized because there are some people that can work with kids. And I know people, I've had guys that have come in, they've worked one day and they just said, nope, I can't do this. This isn't for me. And I respect them
Mm.
because I don't want somebody there because if you can't work with kids, you can't work in a school. So I think most people would be surprised about how impactful it is, and you need good people. This
Yeah.
is not a dumping ground for the officer that can't make it. This is you're dealing with somebody's kid. You make a friend as a parent. If you make a friend with my kid, you'll be a friend for my life. If you treat my kid disrespectfully, I will hate you forever.
Yeah.
That's a pretty that's a pretty big line to toe right there, right? You
Yeah.
make a friend and you respect my kid, I'll be your advocate forever. But if you go ahead and disrespect my kid or you do something and literally, then I will, because it's your children, right? And they're the most precious thing any parent has is their kids.
I really like that you said that you're maintaining a level of expectation for the people who work with you, and that it's not just someone who wants to like coast or someone who, who's just like throwing it in, that you have a higher standard that you're setting for the people who are there because the level of responsibility is really high. You talked about just now a shooting that happened in 2018. Can you walk us through that for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what happened and what was maybe kind of um, what were the lessons learned from that situation?
Well, it was a terrible situation. It was February 14th, 2018. I actually was sitting in the office and I actually watched it unfold because of the news media. The bad guy, Nicholas Cruz, he came to school with an automatic rifle and he ended up shooting staff members as well as students. And he killed, I believe it was 17 plus that day.
Wow.
And unfortunately, the SRO that was involved did not engage in the shooting. It was a deputy sheriff at Broward at the time. There was a lot of little pitfalls on single person active response. Prior to that, after Columbine in '99, we had the training that you got four people. Then with the diamond. Then it went to a triangle. Than it was to single person response. And now the standard is single person. So there was a lot of issues that happened that day that is kind of interesting that it's kind of Murphy's Law. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen. There were issues with a brand new dispatcher. Where the city was situated, the 911 calls ended up going to one place and not the other. The fire department had heard the call, but they weren't sure. They had to get it from an office. It was just if anything could have went bad that day, it happened. And
Mm,
ultimately, out of that, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission was created, which is ultimately what ended up mandating a whole bunch of changes in the state of Florida for minimum practices in school safety. And those minimum practices in school safety has led to safe corners, making sure that all your doors are locked. There's a whole variety of things, school safety teams doing assessment of the physical grounds as well as behavioral threat assessment for the kids that do pose some type of risk. So there's so many things that have come out of the tragedy, and it was really, really horrible because, again, as a parent, I could never imagine what it would be to all of a sudden find out that there's a mass shooting at your school and my child is dead, and you sent them to school that day, and now they're never coming home, where everybody has an expectation that schools are safe places.
yeah.
There was lots of lessons that were learned down there. I did testify in front of the commission down there in best practices of school policing. And by far, absolutely the number one expectation of the community is to protect the staff and the students, period. That's what the SRO on campus is there for. That's what we're trained. We're trained law enforcement. That is our number one priority. And during that day, that didn't occur. Um, SRO got there, and then retreated and stood in a doorway. Um, and then eventually the shooter ran out, and he was eventually caught a couple miles away as he was trying to walk back to his house. And there's just a lot of things happened. Mental health. I mean, there's a million things that were wrong with that kid, and the signs that happened, and there was dropped signs by local agencies as well as there's lots and lots of information about the lessons learned on there. But it ultimately is, you had that one, and then you had the next one, which was out in Uvalde. So you would think that, you would learn from Parkland, and then obviously now we have to learn from Uvalde. And it is always continually is that when you get soft on and lax on school safety and security, you're opening up the door for things to happen that is unspeakable. And as a law enforcement officer, we take that oath that we're going to put ourselves above anyone else. That we're going to make sure that we do whatever we can do in order to stop the bad guys from hurting people. And that day it didn't occur.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I don't think that I knew the intricacies of what happened that day. Um, you talked a little bit about proactive measures, and you said just kind of for a brief second in there about wellness and mental health. How do you think that moving forward, or maybe some of the things that you guys are starting to look at when it comes to wellness and how that relates to safety. And I want to put this in kind of a twofold perspective. One, on the community that you serve, what kind of mental health challenges are you seeing within the student community that you serve? And what are some of the things that you're doing to be proactive to try to get in front of that? And then the second one is, on the officer side of things. What are some maybe things that you guys are now doing as far as being proactive in officer wellness and officer training?
Well, definitely when you look at kids, I mean, I try to tell people all the time, if you're over the age of 40, it's nothing like you went to school. With the advent of social media, you look back and you used to have flip phones. Before flip phones, you had bag phones. Before bag phones, you had the phone on your wall in the kitchen, and then it depended on how long the extension cord was, as how far you get away from your parents, right? So
Right.
it changed so much, and the amount of majority and a lot of the bullying is all online. So what ends up happening is you could be sitting in your bedroom and you're as a parent or cooking dinner, and your kid could be in there just absolutely destroying other kids, and back in the day where you would tell one person, they might tell two, and it may get to 15, 20 people. Now the average kid has hundreds of friends on social media. So that one post now goes to hundreds of people. And so the information highway is so much faster. And there's no fact checking. There's no fact checking. And girls are bullied at a higher level than boys. And it just is, their mental health. I understand, and I see Australia, just if you're, I think it's under the age of 16, you cannot have social media. Florida has continued to be and tried to limit it at elementary school. There are no cell phones in there. There's laws that are being passed to try to curtail the use of social media because we do know the detrimental impact that it does have on our children. And where that goes into is, as an example, I'm driving down the street one day and my daughter says to me, "Hey, Dad, oh, that most popular kid at such and such high school, he goes there." And I was like, "Oh, well, what's his deal?" And she's like, "Oh, Dad, he was at the beach, didn't have his shirt on, and he's like, he's got like over 1,000 likes." And I said, "Oh, wow, that makes him popular." He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, hey, let's pull over, take a picture of me. I'll take my shirt off. Let's see how many likes I can get." And of course, she was mortified. And of course, we didn't do that. But my thing to her was, that's absolutely ridiculous. Your popularity is based on this likes that on some kid that this, and now you throw in their filters, and you have TikTok, and you have Instagram, and you have all these other things, these outlet, Reddit. I mean, you have all this, and that's how they communicate. But on the flip side is one of the things that we're really seeing now is a lot of AI stuff where they're capturing kids and they're making them say and do things that they've never done because it's fake in
Mm,
order for those kids to get bullied, which causes that mental health issue, which we know is, you look at all of these school shootings, the number one and only commonality in all of them is that somebody knew, and it was usually through social media. If you
mm,
just go back to the Parkland shooting, he was posting, he even said what he was going to do. He did these things. People had notified the local authorities. There was lots of issues. There wasn't follow up. There was things that ended up happening, and I'm not disparaging any of the agencies who were involved in it. But at the end, is those are the lessons that you learn. So when you look at mental health for kids, it's so significant of the impact what's going on. And I tell people, what's the biggest change you've seen in kids in 20 years? Without a question, cell phones and social media. I mean, I see 6-year-olds that have cell phones. And of course, you ask their parents, well, it's a babysitter because they're going to put on cartoons. That has led to the mental health issues, I think, for so many people because, you know, it's kind of like now. I have friends that are still posting on Facebook, right? Well, I have a lot of friends that are on Facebook because I'm over 50. So all my friends are on Facebook, right? They're not on TikTok.
right.
But I know what they're eating for dinner and they want people to like it. That's why they're posting. Girls, oh, hey, this woman, look at my new outfit. Hey, look at me doing this. Hey, look, because we're looking for social media to give us that
Validation.
that validation and that little bit of that, a little bit of, I forget what the chemical is, but your mind
The
dopamine
dopamine.
being dumped to be
Yeah.
like, oh, look at me, I still got it, right? I'm this, I'm that. And it's really caused so many significant mental issues with kids because girls will post those things, they'll do those things, they put that there. Do they look cute? Aren't they look cute? Then you got trolls and they're going to say things and fake accounts, and it literally wears them down. And you could have 1,000 kids telling you to go kill yourself. I mean, these kids, they don't understand the difference in reality and what this really is. So
Yeah.
it leads to a lot of significant mental health issues. And, that's one of the things in Florida, we have behavioral threat assessment teams. So if we think that you're a threat, we're going to meet as a group, we're going to look at it, we're going to put safety implications in there. We're going to look at a mental health evaluation of whether or not you needed to be taken to a facility to be evaluated because you're that significant. But a lot of them are mental health because of suicidal ideation, not as much as homicidal ideation.
Mm.
So, but there's a very fine line between there because, and you remember, I don't know, about 15 years, you got suicide by cop, right? People are depressed. They don't want to kill themselves. They want somebody else to do it. So then they go to the police. We end up doing it for them, right? So put us in a situation where we have to shoot them. So mental health, I think, due to social media and the impacts on that has been really, really significant in our kids. Especially, it's just as bad as you get a brand new dress or a brand new something, you post it and nobody comments on it. It's devastating.
Yeah.
Like, why nobody must like me? I have no worth. What's wrong with me? Am I not this? Am I not that? Why do in law enforcement, a lot of it isn't because of that. It's because of the things that we've seen in our career and the amount of stress. Um, Cops die because of stress. During your career, you're always at a heightened level where you're looking, you're watching, you're doing this, and then when you finally retire, that stress, which has been keeping you alive, bottoms out, you have a heart attack and you die. And we as law enforcement need to do better things, such as wellness, being and just going for walks, working out, mentally speak to a counselor, being to really push that messaging that you can talk to a counselor and it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you're not this strong policeman. It means that you're just normal, that you need an outlet. And I've had plenty of officers come to me where they're upset or crying or they just can't take it anymore. And, you spend the time with them and talk to them and get them to somebody. And I think it's becoming more and more widely accepted to go to counseling, where I can tell you 10 years ago, no way. You
Right.
would never ever do that because you were worried that you would get an evaluation for fitness for duty and everybody in the agency would know. And then you would automatically, even though that wasn't correct, you'd automatically be scrutinized that, oh, so and so is, has mental health issues. Be careful with him. You don't want them backing you up. You don't want her coming to your calls. But now I think it's becoming that. So we put that out, EAP, employee assistance programs. We have one here. We put it out. When they come in here, we talk to them about them, let them know about it. We let them know it's available. I mean, for myself, personally, I've been to counseling plenty of times. I've seen in 33 years, I've seen a lot of horrific things that nobody has ever seen. And it's just nice to sit there and talk to somebody to say, hey, should I be feeling like this because I saw this accident where this happened and this and this, and just be able to talk to them. And then we have a place in Sursa, we're lucky, where we actually have a retreat for first responders that they can go, and it's out east of town, and they can go there, and it's very, very calming, and it's people out there, and you just kind of out in nature, and it just pulls all that stress out of you, and you have somebody to talk to. And um, I think that's becoming more commonplace, but we make sure that our officers know and aware that that's there because, you know, the more on edge that you get, especially working with kids or with our community, the more that you may have disciplinary issues or problems. We know there's a direct correlation in that. So this is something to be proactive about, especially the new guys, because, it leads to lots of other issues, whether it's alcoholism, using drugs, uh, all the policemen that are divorced. I ended up getting divorced because you pour everything into the job, and those things that you've seen causes you to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
And so we try to make sure that we put that at the forefront so that they understand that these things are available. And then we try to make sure that the more senior officers, that if we see it, we're going to them, and as a supervisor within the agency, as we make sure that we go out and contact them that, hey, take a look at this. We noticed something's different. Because I think, again, is we have to be more into the, which some people may not agree with me, but I think that in law enforcement, we need to have personal relationships with our employees. Doesn't mean we have to be out going with them, having drinks, doing stuff, you know, it just means we need to know them, that if something is going, that we can see a change, that we should be able to know them well enough to see that change, to step in, to say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? Because the outcome is not good.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to touch on with what you said. And the first thing, kind of going back to childhood and the stressors that come with it in, today's day and age. I am so grateful that I grew up in a time where we didn't have social media. Um, I was laughing when you said like the wall phone, or you're trying to like, even when you had like the little ones that like were kind of portable, you're like trying
Right.
to put the cord under the door, so that you could like have it in your room. And I didn't have social media. I didn't have Facebook until I was in college, and it was reluctantly. My friend like created an account for me, and I didn't really feel like I needed it, but it wasn't until college. And I am seeing how it is today, and I have a lot of empathy for the young people who are growing up with social media at your fingertips in the way that it is. I can only imagine what that does to someone's self-worth and confidence. I've started to have conversations. I'm kind of at the age, I'm going to be 35 this week, actually, at the time of this recording. And so, we've had kid conversations. Are we going to have kids? Are we not going to have kids? We're kind of button up on a timeline. And we've had those conversations of, do we allow our kids to have social media? And if so, at what age? We are seeing a lot of the legislation and things that are happening in other countries, and we're seeing, the writing on the walls with mental health and what that does to kids. And it is a hard subject because you also don't want them to be outcasts and not have accessibility to things that their peers do, but then at the same time, it's like, at what point are you protecting them, and at what point are you hurting them? And so I think it is a hard conversation. And
Well, I can tell you this, as I tell parents ask, at what age should your kid get social media? Well, the age that they can be educationally appropriately. So if you're just going to hand your kid a phone, it'd be like me giving you the car keys and saying, hey, here you go, learn how to drive on your own, see you later. And it's a Ferrari, right?
yeah,
They're going to hit the gas pedal and they're going to go as fast as it can until they hit something, right? It's the same thing as when your child is old enough to be away from you, that you need to be in contact with them. That's when they should get a phone. And at that point, you need to talk to them because, we talk about all the mental health stuff in there, such as, suicidal ideation because people are bullying you, which is the number one problem. But
mhm,
we're not talking about like online sexual predators. They don't come on there and say, "Hi, I'm Billy. I'm 57 years old and I'm going to do these horrible things." No, they're going on to all these other sites. They're downloading photos. They can be able to get photos of some kid that's the same. They're making fake profiles and then they're luring them and they're doing these things and they're building relationships and they're getting inappropriate pictures because these kids want to bond with somebody and they want to trust someone and they think that this person is it. So there's also that whole other avenue. But at the end of the day, at some point you are going to get it because you are going to be outcast
yeah,
because that's how you're going to get invited to the party. They're not going to call your mom and say, hey, we're having a party at 6 out in the pasture over at such and such, or we're going to meet at, Beach Access number 5 here in Florida. They're going to have you in a group chat, or they're
right.
going to snap it out to you on Snapchat, or they're going to post something on Instagram because they probably don't want their parents to know. So
Yeah,
it really comes back to the education piece. That's the most important piece in the whole thing.
I
So
agree.
have kids, just when it comes time, make sure that they understand that there's a lot of things that could go wrong out there. But really is what I found is, I had a woman come to me one time, a mom, and said, my daughter put a lock on the outside of her bedroom door and told me I couldn't go in. And I said, what'd you do? She said, I haven't done anything. I'm asking you. I said, well, go home, take your foot, smash the door open, then take it off the hinges, and then go in there and make sure make sure you're with a girl that she understands that you're paying for the phone. This is your house, this is your place, and that But that comes back to this relationship, right? is you got to have a relationship with your child so that they do see something that's inappropriate or they do getting these requests that they're going to be able to come forward to you. And I can tell you it's a hard one because even in my house, I had three kids. The one that had the one that ultimately had the most issues was my daughter by far. Um, and it got pretty, I mean, it was pretty significant because I hate to say it, but girls in middle and high school can be pretty cruel
Yeah.
to each other. And, it was very trying. My two boys, they were like, who cares? They weren't coming to me for anything, right? But my daughter to have to come was really hard for her because with some embarrassing stuff. It was all lies, but she needed the support of her family.
Mm.
You have to have that relationship. You have that relationship with the education. Then social media is going to be fine because you're only going to tolerate what you want to tolerate, and have a boundary that when it goes to that's not then it's off. Then there's no more.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of better things that parents can do now with turning phones off and ringers and going online and disabling and locations and life three. I mean, it's come 100 miles in the last 5 years, so it is getting better for that. But overall, it's that education and having a relationship with your parent that's going to eliminate a lot of your issues.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what we talked about too about being proactive, whether it's being proactive with building relationships, being proactive with building trust, being proactive when it comes to wellness and having those conversations. The second part of what you were talking about was being proactive with the individuals who work with you within the organization. How can you build those relationships so that you understand what the norm is for people, whether that's your students or, your employees, like how, or your peers, how do you know when something's off? How do you know when to intervene? All of those proactive steps. And, we,
Well, like you with your friends, right? If you've been friends with them for a while, so all of a sudden if something's off,
right.
you can tell right away. Well, I'll give you the whole secret in school policing is, we talk about it, safety is a layered approach, right? But it really starts about the officer that's in the school, the teachers that are in the schools to develop relationships with kids because every kid knows everything. You
Mm,
get those relationships, you develop them. That's what prevents school shootings
yeah.
because then you can intervene before it happened. Afterwards, it's way too late. It's just not going to work.
You had built an entire police department, and it at one point was the number one safest school. Can you just maybe give a little bit of insight on what does it take? I know we've talked about some of those things already, the relationships, being proactive, but what does it take to build the safest police department in a school?
Well, that's a very, very lengthy, complicated answer. But what I would tell you is in the Florida, we only have three full service, which we have full service agencies. One is in Miami-Dade, the second one is in Palm Beach, and the third one is in Sarasota. And with the assistance, I've worked at the sheriff's office for 29 years. The sheriff at the time was very, very instrumental in assisting me with his personnel, policies, procedures, general orders, critical incident guides, all the same things that I had developed at the sheriff's office. He allowed me to take with me to create the school police department. But I mean, when you talk about it, every record, every server, every property and evidence, every records management systems, all the requirements for CGIS with the FBI, I had to bring all of that over here and create it and hire personnel and uniforms and cars and be able to get to the community to tell them what we were amongst the faculty. We have 47,000 students in Sarasota County and about 7,000 employees. So we also had to talk to them about why we were doing it and ultimately what's going to be the difference between us and the local municipality or the sheriff. And it was basically we're going to be focused and specialized on dealing with kids. That's going to be our bread and butter. That's where we're going to focus. We're going to do everything we can in order to keep kids safe on this campus. So how you do that? So when I ended up retiring, because I'm kind of unique, I retired in January of 2022. I had created a department in about 3.5 years. At the end of the 3.5 year, we were rated by niche as the safest school district in the state of Florida. Out of the 67 counties, rated Sarasota number one.
Oh,
I ended up retiring. Sheriff talked me into running for school board. Got elected on the school board. Was there for 3 years. Now I'm back as the chief of the same department that I created, because this is really where I'm more fulfilled. It wasn't being in political office. But it took a lot, and it took a lot of buy-in, and it took a lot of communication and transparency, and it was a huge lift. I mean, by standards, we have a little over 70 officers, 159 employees. Um, it was a pretty big lift to be able to do all of that, and with the assistance of the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office and the municipalities that we have here, we were able to, I think, do a pretty good job in a pretty short period of time, because when it comes to kid safety, I can tell you everybody is about it. We want our kids to go to school, and we want them to be safe, come home. We want our teachers. We're the second largest employer in Sarasota County, the hospital being number one, we're number two. And we have an expectation. And again, it's raising your level to that expectation to make sure that we're doing all the right things. So I also teach for the FBI National Academy Associates, and part of their leadership track, um, which has morphed into the leadership track. But at the end of the day, it was best practices in school policing, lessons learned, and I did the top 5 school shootings.
mm,
So I took the top 5 school shootings and I broke them down into lessons that we learned, whether it was Sandy Hook, whether it was Uvalde, whether it was down at Parkland. Took those shootings. This is what it is. This is what the standard is for this to bring back to your community. And a lot of that is because all of this costs money, is having the buy-in of the school district, the school board, the citizens for that implementation piece. And I'm I'd say I'm very blessed. I'm a faith-based person. The community embraced us for coming in and changing out, and with the leadership that I was able to provide, and because I had been doing this for like 19 years prior to that, it kind of like all we did was change from a green uniform to a blue uniform, and everybody was good with it because they knew that I was going to do the same thing that I did with the sheriff's office that I was going to do for them. So the transitional piece, the lift was hard creating it all. But the end result, I was very proud of, when I left in January of 22. That you know, that's a pretty huge accomplishment for such a short period of time.
love it. On the topic of leadership, what is the most valuable leadership lesson that you've learned so far?
Listening. You cannot be a good leader unless you listen.
Mm,
Um, Communication is a two-way street. Being overly officious has never been something that anybody really respects. You listen to what everyone has to say, then be concise, make your decision and move forward from it. And while you're implementing your decision, if things change, then understand that you can also change, because you can be wrong. I thought it was this, and let's move it over a little bit to this. And I think that listening is the biggest. I think that people don't. It's the same thing with anything. In your marriage, the biggest thing you could ever do is listen. And I probably wasn't a very good listener earlier in my career. So listening is such a huge part, because you can't do anything or make corrective action, and nobody is a mind reader. And so just to be able to listen to your employees, listen to the culture and climate that's in your community, listen to what people are saying, look at those different things, educate yourself to, what is, we're in the business of customer service as well. What is going on? How are we? But we need to listen, because if we don't listen, then we're going to make uneducated decisions, and that we're just guessing.
yeah.
So I would say the biggest thing in leadership is listen, make your decision, be concise, move forward with it, but also understand that it can change, because that's what we have to do, because things change so rapidly now that we need to make sure that we're able to do the same things.
Yeah. Thank you. My final question for you is for the younger generation. In the context of wellness, What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Well, I can say that I can say that being in this for so long, again, this is my 36 year of public safety, with including my time as the chair of the school board. That what I could tell you is the biggest thing, as I would tell if I was brand new, is to make sure that you slow down and you take care of your family and you make sure that you take care of your mental health. Make sure that you go to the gym. Make sure that you go on walks. Make sure that you pour into your family's cup. Fill them up so they can fill you up. Do those things that make you feel good. In law enforcement, especially, the better you are, the more work you get. It's like no good deed goes unpunished. You know, the better you are, the more handoffs you get. The better you are, the more they want you to work. Because as a supervisor, it makes it easier, right? If I know this guy's going to be able to accomplish it and I don't have to sit there and micromanage and look at him, oh my goodness, is he going to get it done and all this? Because my boss may have given me that assignment. I'm going to go to the person that I know that can do it. So that person keeps getting all the work. So I can tell you in my life, I didn't take vacations with my family. We never went anywhere. My marriage suffered because I didn't put the time and energy that I needed into that to make it to be that way. Because I was so married to the job and I was so driven for that success at the job that they, the more I gave, the more they gave me.
Yeah.
The more I gave, the more stuff and responsibilities I got. And then we need to get promoted. And then we need to get promoted again. And then we need to get promoted. Now, I can tell you, professionally, had a blessed career. I'm at the top of the top, right? I mean, I'm very, very humbled to be where I'm at. But on the personal stuff is we're not at work at all the time. We're at home most of the time. And those are where I wish that I would have known that, hey, you know what? It's okay sometimes not to do that extra detail because you need an extra couple $100. Sometimes you don't have to work that overtime because you feel when your sergeant's telling you, hey, we don't have anybody else, I really need you. It's okay to say no because, what we're realizing is it comes down to is a work-life balance. Is if your work is too much, your life suffers. If your life's too much, your work suffers. And we really need to kind of make that. So I would have said to anybody who's a brand new officer, mental health is a real thing amongst cops. You're going to see a lot of terrible things. You need to make sure you take care of yourself because if you don't take care of yourself, it's going to come out in a lot of the relationships, whether it's your friends, your spouse, your girlfriends, your boyfriends, to your children, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's, I've had people here that have gotten addicted to Oxycontin, a lot of alcoholism in law enforcement. It's all masking because of the things that we've been through and saw that we never were able to because we've put so much stuff in the suitcase. The suitcase doesn't close now,
Mm.
and that stuff keeps bubbling out. That's the best analogy I could tell you. When you're in your early career, that suitcase, nice, I can fold that up and put it right here in the corner. And then by the time you get in 5 to 10 years, ooh, it's almost getting to the top. By the time you're, by 15 years, depending on where you're at, that thing may not close anymore. And so now you're like, now it's affecting you. And it is, but you don't want to go and ask. We're now getting that time where, hey, you need to ask. You need to know up front what it is. But what I would say is take care of yourself first and your family. Because ultimately in life, I can tell you that that's the most important thing you will ever have is your family, is that person who is there for you when you come home, when you had the bad shift. Because then when they're gone, it only creates more issues, more problems for you, which then affects your mental health. So it's kind of like that downward spiral. And eventually it will affect you at your work too, because it's just something that I would have told my earlier self. Go to the gym more, go on walks, take family vacations, say no to that extra detail, explain to the sergeant or whoever, hey, this is what I need to do because I need to be the best I can be. I need this time for me. I need this time for my wife. I need this time for my kids. This is what I wanted to do. And that would be my messaging. Slow down, take the time, work on yourself. Because when you're done with your 30 years or 20, 25, all you're left with is yourself. Your
Yeah.
career is your career, but your life is going to be what you've made it. And I think we lose focus in law enforcement on that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about the things that you've done, the things that you've seen, your words of inspiration and wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you anytime.
Of course.